I was in a hotel this week with friends, and it included in the overnight stay a breakfast. So we're down at the breakfast table, eating and talking and laughing, and next to us is this couple from India with a 4-year-old little boy whose name was Heath. And they spoke their native language, but also English very well, and would go back and forth between the two languages. And so we were talking a little bit back and forth. And all of a sudden, I noticed the 4-year-old pointing at me and saying something in his native language to his dad. And then he would point, and then he would laugh, and then he would look at me. And all of a sudden, I overheard the dad say, "Well, Heath, God must have been so busy the day that he made him, he didn't have time to give him hair." Because they all had long hair. And I thought to myself, now, what a creative answer to a 4-year-old who would, of course, know nothing about genetics, and rather to try to go into some long explanation, he just gave him that answer. I think that's what the gospel is calling us to this morning, to be creative in how we frame the truths that we believe. We need to be creative in how we pass on the faith. We need to use language that today's generation will appreciate and understand. We are about to end our year of mercy. And the best way, of course, of showing mercy is through example. If children grow up in a home where it's very easy to say, "I'm sorry," and mean it, or to ask for forgiveness, or to forgive others, then they will appreciate the church's focus on God's mercy. But beyond that, what stories can we use today to talk about God's mercy? What current cartoon characters might have something to add? What about today's music or popular movies? What do they say not only about mercy, but about other truths like generosity and honesty and commitment and helping others, charity? We need to listen to today's music. We need to go to today's movies in order that we have language and examples and stories that speak to the generation who comes alive in that. I suppose, in a way, my goofy jokes in the bulletin every Sunday is my way of doing that. But I always try to connect them somehow to a theme or a message in the gospel, and sometimes, granted, it's quite a stretch, and other times it's kind of easy. But we each need to find a way to pass on our faith in language and examples and stories that today's people can understand. Now, some methods, of course, are time-honored, and they will hold true in every generation, even though there are slight differences. For example, I can remember when I was a little kid, my grandma had this picture of Jesus in the house, and I've almost never seen another one like it. It was like the child Jesus, and he had curly blonde hair, and he was sitting there just kind of looking at you. And she'd hold me in her arms, and she'd take me past that picture, and she'd say, "That's Jesus. He's your friend." And as she said that, she would squeeze me a little tighter. And I remember that after all these years, from the very beginning of my life, I knew that Jesus was my friend. I can remember we didn't have hot lunch. We all took our lunches in a in a little lunch box. And you had to have the best one of those and the current one of those, of course. But anyway, we took our lunches. And every once in a while, sitting at lunch in school, somebody across the table would say, "Can I have your cookie?" And every once in a while, somebody would say, "Oh, sure," even though it was her favorite one. She still gave it away. And I can remember really growing up believing that my mother had eyes in the back of her head. I could never get away with a thing. She knew everything that I did, and it drove me nuts. But she would always say to me, "While I don't appreciate what you did, I really respect you for being honest and admitting it." Now today, those truths are still things that we want to pass on. We want to pass on that Jesus is a friend. We want to pass on generosity and sharing. We want to pass on honesty and integrity. And the grandmas today might look, no offense, Grandma, a lot cuter than years ago. The cookie that's being shared might be store-bought rather than homemade. And the bad choices that we hope our kids admit might seem to us to be a lot worse than anything we ever did. But the gestures of mercy and honesty and sharing remain the same. The truth remains unchanged, even though our ways of teaching it might look very different. It's just packaged differently. It's like every good teacher that we have ever had is one who, after a year or two or three, throws out all the lesson plans and says, "I need to start over. I need new examples. I need new stories. I need new ways of teaching the same concepts." It's just how it is. So the family from India finished breakfast, and they get up and they're leaving, and the little kid looks at me and points at me once more and says, "You're really funny." And I knew he meant funny looking. And I thought, now there are parents who have taught their 4-year-old how to be honest.